Good morning, everybody. This is Robin Ayub from the Localization Fireside Chat, and welcome to another podcast recording. Today, we are recording episode number 117, and I'm joined today by EA Clarke, a leader who has lived the startup roller coaster from inside out. After helping grow and sell early stage companies, EA has become the founding executive and another startup where he raised nearly $14 million and built sales and marketing from the ground up. That experience, combined with over 30 years of recruitment, gave him a unique perspective on how broken the traditional hiring can be. And we'll talk further about this one. That's a very interesting topic today. He's the founder of Pivot and Edge, and Pivot and Edge is a company that is based here in Canada, where he helps leaders think and rethink hiring and guiding them to craft and share their story in a way that attracts the right talent, the right candidates to their corporation, which everybody wants, everybody needs nowadays. Having the right candidate, looking for that needle in the haystack is very important. And over the years, EA have coached and countless of C-level executives shaped employers' brand, because that's how you market yourself as an employer to attract the right talent, by reshaping your brand, how others view you, and helped high performance teams that actually scales. So scaling is a big discussion now on everybody's mind, and scaling with the right individual makes it a lot easier to scale than trying and failing and trying and failing again to finally get it right. So EA, pleasure to have you on board today. Pleasure to have you part of this conversation today. I'm excited about having you on board today.
Robin, thanks for the invitation. It was fortunate that we met in Burlington, I guess, and had those conversations, and it ends up in this. So I'm looking forward to the conversation today. Thanks.
Great. Thanks, EA. For the audience, just if you don't mind liking and sharing the comment, that would help the channel quite a bit. Again, this channel is self-funded. It's me who started it about 3 years ago. We're on episode 117 today with EA, but this is a personal effort. It's not sponsored by anybody. I appreciate you engaging with the content. That really helped the channel quite a bit. And by the way, it's not a money-making channel. We're not getting paid by YouTube, or I don't want everybody to think that we're going home rich from recording these. This is just a personal effort. I love the conversation with people like EA. 117 executives has been through this channel so far. I really enjoy the conversation. They tell me they enjoy the conversation. So this is pretty good. Want to thank everybody who's been a guest on the channel so far. And I want to also thank the audience, the 62,000 followers around the globe who listens to the channel, and some of you who takes me with them to the gym. I thank you for that. But if I was in the gym, I'd probably listen to other than my voice in the gym. So thank you so much for listening to us and making us part of your journey along the way. Hey, before we get started, this channel is famous for something called, we start the conversation with, it's a bit of an icebreaker, to be honest with you. Everybody's got a story. And, on this channel, we always ask people the first question: what is your story? And I know you and I have spoken before. The audience is excited to learn your story. The floor is yours, EA.
Well, so my story starts in the early 80s, and living in Ottawa, the tech sector, Ottawa was a tech sector for us. And I wanted to work in tech. So my first role was in a company called Mitel Corporation. And I know this because I was in human resources at the time, and particularly focused in recruiting. I was employee number 100, and we grew to almost 5,000 people in a period of about 6 or 7 years. And I took on various roles in recruiting back then, everything from on-campus recruiting, the executive side eventually. And I got a real sense of how critically important it was to get the right people in the right jobs. That was early on, but then a few more years in a corporate setting, and then an opportunity to get in an early stage company and really move right out of the HR realm and into sales and marketing. And I jumped at it. And I've never left that environment of early stage excitement. Figure out as you go, try to get the right people in the right jobs and get a successful company moving and growing. I did a couple of different ventures that way. One was in a digital video company called DVS Communications, and we eventually were able to grow that large enough for someone else to look at it, and it was bought by a larger company. And then I got into the venture capital business, where I worked with a company spun out of a company called Nortel Networks at the time. Many people would still know of Nortel back in the day, a very large tech success story in Canada. But we raised, as you were mentioning, north of $12, $14 million US, grew that company to over 100 people. There is where I've got my first taste of the executive side, the traditional recruiting support. As a VP of sales and marketing, I had to build out a sales organization. I had no idea how to do it. And it just got very challenging to kind of find people that understood our story. And NetActive was a company that delivered content on CD and locked that content for distribution. So the story wasn't an easy one to tell, and I found out that most recruiters didn't understand what we were doing, didn't understand the value that we brought, didn't understand the culture that I wanted. And so although I may find some people that were good as I built out the organization, they really didn't get it. They didn't respond correctly to the culture that we wanted to build, and that was a continued struggle throughout the growth. That company ended up going bankrupt prior to we were poised to go public, and we had done the right things to do that. And then 9/11 happened, and
That's NetActive, right? That's NetActive.
NetActive, yeah. There's lots of positive and lots of fun that comes from that memory. And then there's, of course, the tragedy of 9/11 and us not going public. That, a lot of people worked very hard to get it to poise to that happening. And we had competitors who were trading 400, 500 times earnings at the time. We would have been one of those, but timing didn't happen. Anyway, at the end of the day, it taught me a lot of things about how to grow, what not to do, and the frustrations behind trying to find the right people to help you get to where you need to go. After that, I had an opportunity to work in the executive search business, and I did that for a little over 23 years. But even then, when I launched that, I was surrounded by a number of what I would have called traditional executive search, where they would hide the database, only provide the right certain people to the customer. They were charging like 30% of a starting salary. I changed that and went to a fixed price fee. And I tried to do my best to basically understand the value that my customer wanted to portray, understand the culture. And I focused a lot on fit as much as I did on, the requirements of the role. And I think that paved the way for me to be very successful in that career. But so that brings me up to today. And I learned from the Mitel experience of high growth. I learned from the NetActive experience of trying to find talent. I learned from executive search business of trying to figure out the value and the culture before I put candidates forward. And today I founded Pivot and Edge to kind of take us to another level and try to figure out a better way to solve recruiting problems for customers. So there's my story.
Absolutely. And thanks for that. I really appreciate it. What a tremendous journey. And for the audience who's been there, I was recording another episode yesterday. And what did I learn from that one? I learned a saying that says, jump off the bridge and figure out how to make the parachute on your way down. This is the example, another example of entrepreneurship that driven by expertise, a need in the marketplace, that you saw a gap and you wanted to fill that gap. Bringing a solution to a problem. You defined what you saw what the problem is. You defined it. You already lived it, and you thought, okay, well, I got a solution for this, and I'm going to do it. And you didn't just sit on the side. You went out, you activated this, and you make it happen. So, just want to ask you a question. Just a general question on my side, unrelated, probably all related. I don't know how you view that, but have you done podcasts before? What excites you the most about conversations like this one? Is it the story, your story, the Pivot and Edge story? What excites you the most?
I think it is the Pivot and Edge story, actually. My story, if anybody knew me, they'd say, oh my goodness, EA, I've heard that story so many times.
But many of us audience haven't heard that story, and then amplifying it for you,
Yeah.
I think it sends a message out there that for those who are contemplating an initiative or starting a company, including myself, who is in the process of starting a company. I'm learning as I go here from recording this podcast. So telling the story, those stories that needs to be told, and that's why the channel has started. There are many stories hiding under a rock that nobody wanted to tell them, or nobody thought about telling them, because they probably weren't there sexy, exciting, people like, connect them to something. These are related to human stories, such as yours. Started a business, learned from failure, get up and go and start something else. Those are very important conversations to be had. And I'm thankful again for you to be on the channel.
Well, here's what's kind of interesting, and I do enjoy the fact that you describe these as stories, because this is really the key to the pivot and edge strategy. That our company is really a marketing first that solves a recruiting problem, and that marketing component piece is all about storytelling, and the storytelling of where your organization is going, the value that it brings, the executive suite stories of how they got there, what they want that company to be. Those are all the stories that will attract the talent that you need. And I think people underestimate that recruiting is simply posting a job and ticking off the boxes of does this individual meet all the requirements. And although meeting the requirements and having the experience is very relevant to success, there's no question about that. If I want a vice president of sales, I want someone that's got a proven track record of building that organization out, that knows how to hire talent, has sold in the market space that we're currently in. All those are really critical. But I think what makes that employee successful is the relationship between the C-suite and their story. And if they don't understand the story, or don't agree with the story, or agree with the values that the company is bringing, particularly in the early stages of an organization, it's probably doomed for failure. And I think that's where Pivot and Edge comes in, is that we will focus in on those stories to attract the right talent. And I do think that's key to the company's success, particularly in the early stages.
Absolutely. And I had a bunch of discovery conversation that I wanted to have with you about Pivot and Edge, starting with what is the exact moment when you realize that traditional hiring or traditional recruiting is broken and you decided to build Pivot and Edge? Was there a story that really hit you hard and you said, okay, you know what? We all hear lots of story during the day, during the week, many conversations we would have, but some of them hits us different than others. I'm assuming there was a moment where you said, that's it. I've got to do something about it.
Well, there was a specific time in my past where the wrong person ended up in the job, and it actually took us on a technical trajectory that wasn't right. And I'll keep the names and the companies out of this, but the original person in the technology role in one of the companies that I was in was a believer. I'm going to use that term, was a believer in what we needed to do and what we wanted to do. And I can remember coming back from a large customer meeting on a plane, and this individual saying to me, EA, I will build that for that. And that started a whole trajectory of technology that was going to change the way we delivered and how we serviced our customer. He tragically had a stroke, and we had to replace him with someone else. It was a convenient replacement, but it wasn't really one that I believe we had the same kind of values. And so the technology sputtered a bit, and it changed the trajectory. Now, at the end of the day, we did deliver that, but I don't think we delivered it to the solutions that we could have. That's just one example. And I think that made it very clear to me that that value, that belief kind of almost supersedes capability sometimes. Like you need to, if you're finding a technical job, you need to be an engineer or a computer scientist. I totally get that. But if I need something extra out of somebody, I need someone to put in the hours that are necessary to deliver a project that's critical to a customer requirement or needs that extra, energy applied to it. I don't think that comes from knowing how to do it. I think it comes from the values you see and the alignment you have with the company. You want it to succeed because you're part of that culture. And that's really the storytelling aspect, Robin, that we try to focus on with Pivot and Edge, that if we can get the story out, then we can attract talent that relates to the story. And I think that's critical.
So lining up the philosophy between the candidate and the hiring company.
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
So we need to, I've always been fascinated, by, and I've been doing this for as probably not as many years as you've done, but I've done my share, about 3 decades in this thing, business development. And I always been asked the question, specifically around when people are trying to find a job or they're asking my advice, what do you think, Robin? Or somebody that works for me, and they're all of a sudden they come in and say somebody else pay me more and I need to go and, explore that. I cannot really leave it alone. The pay gap is so big. That's how people normally leave jobs, right? Or from some other reasons. But generally it's because of pay. And not always the case though. But in any case, I always say that, look, money, you can fix the formula. The one formula you cannot fix is the chemistry between you and the employer. And it has to be a match. And if you're not matching with the employer, that will be a short-lived, relationship that you're trying to build with the employer. And you validated that right now by matching between the stories, between the candidate story and the employer, their story.
Yeah, I think. Can I just add to that? It's interesting you say that, because I in one of the career steps, I think you mentioned it earlier. I would have said that, the president of that company would jump off a cliff and we would all just jump with him and figure it out on the way down. I think that was kind of what you suggested earlier. And I think that comes from, it comes from the dynamics of the individual, of course, but it also comes from that person's ability to tell the story of the company. And then you believe that that's a success, that's going to be a successful business. And therefore you jump. So to your point, I think that is exactly right. I mean, I think when a company gets to a certain size, I don't think you can control the dynamics of that. You can't necessarily control the culture. Although I think some successful companies have done it. I think companies like Apple still seem to have a culture beyond the depth and size that is. But I think it just gets harder and harder. But certainly in that early stage, that high growth stage, you're right. I mean, it is all about that value, that culture, that, you believe in that leadership.
Absolutely. One of my podcasts here, I was just reminded of this as you speak here. The sense I get in today's world, in terms of today's hiring atmosphere, is that successful companies are trying to turn their employees into entrepreneurs, similar to, at least in the thinking process, similar to the initial founder, if you will, of that particular. For instance, companies are trying to make employees owners or part owners of those companies by giving them stock options, by giving them a piece of the pie, if you will, to move the thinking around. You're not necessarily an employee now. In added to that, you are an employee, obviously, because you have an employment contract. But in added to that, you are now a part owner of this company. I had an old boss. He always telling me, like, treat it as if you own it. And, just imagine if you own the company, what your decision would be if you own the company. And I think the movement to that, it adds a lot of partaking responsibility for employees and for owners. You're getting closer now to the thinking of the employer in terms of driving the company forward. Are you seeing that, or is that what you're exhibiting out there?
Yeah, I mean, I think to a certain degree, I believe that to be true, and I think beyond ownership, there's profit sharing. People are using there's a variety of ways to show people that they're a contributor, member of the team, and without them, you couldn't be as successful as you are. I think that is critically important. In fact, I would say that the most frustration I would have as a manager was if I saw someone doing something that I thought was not in the best interest of the company and was in the best interest of them. And I would take that almost personally, that, why did you not think of that customer in a different way? And I would own that, because I would say I've done something wrong here, because you as that employee should care as much about that customer as I do. And if they're not, then I haven't done a good job of extending the values that I think are important to the company and therefore important to our customers. So I would agree with you. I think also we're finding that candidates today are doing much more research on the companies that they're applying to. This is maybe it's easier to do than it used to be, because you can certainly find out everything you need to know about the potential employer. But we are finding that if a candidate sees a job posting, now there are a percentage of candidates that just, as you say, swipe right, yes, swipe no, to not apply to a job, and there are a number of those. And I don't think they're very successful at finding a job. But the candidates that are successful in finding good work are very research oriented when it comes to the company. So right away they go to the website. What is the company doing? What's the value that they bring? Do I want to work for a company that builds XY? Do I want to work for a company that sells software to these kinds of customers? That kind of thing. They also go and look at the executive team. LinkedIn has become a very great research tool beyond a lot of other things it does. But, I can find the entire C-suite of a small, medium-sized company on LinkedIn. And then I go and look at those people and find out what they do. Are they involved in philanthropy or not? Are they involved in social or are they not? And then I start to get a perspective and an attitude toward that company. Do I want to work there, and do I want to apply for those jobs? So those are areas that Pivot and End spends a lot of time in, making sure that social front to a candidate is available to them to have a look. So one of the first things we would do is look at the C-suite. Are you on LinkedIn? Do you have good, clean profiles? Can they find out more about you? And we do a lot of additional marketing work to provide that kind of detail and information to candidates so that they get a sense of what the company's like.
And do you find, in your opinion, EA, like when you give those recommendations to a company, that you probably give them a list of checklists that they need to do? You mentioned one, which is your profiles on LinkedIn.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe other items that they need to look at, their website, make it more visible in certain other aspects, like your philanthropy and a few other items you probably may be important to some candidates. You try to create a candidate-facing image for those companies. Do you find companies are willing to work with you on that, or you've seen some resistance?
So, the kind of activities that we would do, for example, is we have a seminar series that basically helps people clean up their LinkedIn profiles. And because some of them don't think that that's a critical component to attracting candidates, but it is. But we do other things on the social side. We would create C-suite videos telling the story of why they joined, why they think it's important. And we call them spotlights. So we would highlight, key employees to tell their story. And that all ends up on a page that anybody that's applying to any jobs that our customers have posted can go and have a look and find out what the CEO says, what the VP of engineering says, what some key employees are saying about the company, and they can get a perspective of that. We do that. Some of our customers embrace that, just think it's incredibly valuable. And others, we have to really sell it to them. This method of recruiting, this marketing first recruiting strategy is relatively new. And I think that's what kind of attracted you to invite me to this podcast, because you're looking at this going, this is really disruptive,
It is.
This is kind of interesting. So you can imagine that customers look at it as, I've never heard of this kind of strategy before. I use the analogy, though, the Uber now. I think I used that with you when we first met, but you can imagine that now you think, okay, if I need an Uber ride, I open my app, I click the button, I tell them where I want to go, and 5 minutes later, someone shows up. But if I was to present that opportunity to you, like even 10 years ago, say this, here's what's going to happen. You're going to just order a car, and it's going to come, and it's going to be a complete stranger, and he's or she's driving their own vehicle. And it's 10 at night, and you're going to get in the back seat, and you're going to go, and you're going to expect them to take you home, and everything's going to be okay. And you would look at me and go, wow, that's a stretch. I can't see that happening. And that is just so commonplace today. So not that we're Uber, we're certainly not that, but do I think more and more organizations take this marketing first approach to recruiting? Yes, I do. And I do think the candidates that are applying want it. And I do think we have become a differentiator. So in these early stage companies, these growth plays that we're participating in most, they don't have a brand like BMW or IBM or Oracle.
They don't have a brand, period, at that point.
Right. Their only brand is their culture and their founder and their C-suite. And if you can't tell that to people, why are they applying?
That's right. That's right. And indirectly, when you're marketing to your candidates, you're marketing to your customers, believe it or not. Some people don't think that, but if you're marketing to your candidates, customers read that loud and clear, that you value people, you value your team, and you're marketing to candidates or to talents to come and work for you in a way that probably it's not seen before, specifically now in the type of economy that we're in. People think, I don't need to do this. There's plenty of candidates out there. The job market is not in the candidate's favor right now. It's in the employer's favor. So they don't need to they don't need to exert any effort. But the mere fact that you do, and it doesn't cost that much to do, in comparison for other costs that company puts out there, to put out like a few videos and clean up your social profile. It doesn't cost you that much. But the image that sends out there, and I 100% agree with you, if you start with that, your customer's going to see it as much as your candidate is going to see it. So it's going to impact your revenue immediately.
So what? I'll just give you an example of that. So we run a managed service, which is called the Hub. So essentially what we do is we create all this content that I'm describing, the CEO video, the C-suite video, the spotlights. We capture awards that you might have won, the fact that you're participating in a social setting in downtown Toronto or a technology fair in Vancouver or Texas, in Austin, Texas or something. And we capture all that content and we distribute that content through our customers' network. So that network is all the employees. That network could be the investors, friends, family. And what simply we do, we take the content, we send emails to all those people and basically says, please share this content. That can be shared on any social platform, LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook. And we extend and we amplify that content throughout that net. And one of the companies that we work with today, their CEO came to me and said, can we use this for our marketing? And I said, of course you can. Yes, that's not who we are, though. He said, no, but we've got the platform established. We've got 80% of our employees on the platform sharing content. I want to use this to share all our marketing content because when you think about it, Rob, all the employees are connected to the marketplace. The marketplace is connected to the customer place. So, by sharing the information on your socials, those customers are absolutely seeing it. They're seeing, recruitment growth, strategy in the right direction. And now they're seeing product changes and product offerings. Just a quick anecdote to that. One of the product launches that this company did, they launched it on their own corporate LinkedIn page. And then they turned around and put the same link and launched it through our hub strategy. And we got next response on ours. So that's telling us that more people are connected to your network of people and employees than are as customers.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I can see why. I can see why. Think about it. In the business world, who wants to do business with a pessimistic, downward spiraling company? Nobody wants to do that. People wants to do business with positive, growing, exciting organizations. And you know what? Business to business and business to consumer alike are the same. Because we as business buyers are before that, we are consumer buyers. And sort of like the behavior has transcended into the business world. We buy as, from a business perspective, B2B, you buy as you are a consumer. You take that behavior with you everywhere you go. So yeah, I absolutely agree with you. Nobody wants to do business with a company that it's projecting or not projecting any image out there. This is you're competing with in the business world. You're competing with a company that is projecting a positive, exciting image versus a company that is, just doing the run of the mill, day in, day out type of thing. And, just posting the news on their LinkedIn profile and off you go. I've done my work today. There is a calculated ROI for positive image companies out there and their velocity of growth, which is positive, to the the companies that don't do any of this stuff. So you're on the right track for this one. Now, one of your few words that you said the other day, which I really captured, marketing, not cold calling, solve the hiring problems. I know we're unpacking all this right now, but could you add some highlight in some anecdotes as to how marketing solved, in your opinion, the problem of, I don't want to cold call candidates anymore. Hey, are you interested in coming with me? I mean, I'm talking about those candidates that you really, they're thought after, they're top of the food chain, if you will. If you're hiring a CRO, you're hiring a CTO or a CFO kind of a hire. You probably have designated names that you want to go after, but you don't want to call them. You want to attract them in. Is that where this is going?
Yeah, I mean, let's use the Amazon analogy. Could you imagine Amazon just randomly phoning people and saying, do you want to buy a tent, or do you want to buy a basketball? Or no, that's just it's not a product to consumer strategy. And that's not what Pivot and Edge is all about. Pivot and Edge identifies the types of candidates that you want, and we determine where they live, where they work, and where they play, and we target them with advertising. That's really what we do. And if when we target the right people with the right story, it'll resonate, and they'll get curious. And that's the best kind of potential candidate you can have, is a curious one. And the minute they get curious, you better be ready to solve the curiosity with information about who you are, the value you bring, who those C-suite are, and why would I be interested in joining. And so we build all that content out in preparation for that curiosity. And once we've created it through, demand generation, you've heard these terms before, not in a recruiting environment, but that's our environment, demand gen. We identify the candidates, we go after them, we communicate to them. And in every communication we provide to them, we provide additional links to additional information. And it's not a lot different than, I'm looking at something on Amazon and I get 3 other things that I might want to also buy when I'm there. So there's a similar strategy to that. And quite frankly, we never run out of good candidate flow in our strategy. We solve the customer problems, but it's done in a much more cost-effective way without the heavy lifting of, cold.
And are these candidates you're talking about, are they within your network or outside your network? If they are outside of your network, is that part of the attraction process?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I don't think they're the definition of inside or outside or a network. I think the definition of a candidate is we figure out what you need in terms of the requirements. We find out where they live and work and play, and we go after them. Every assignment we have is new. Every assignment, we don't come to a customer and says, we've got this extensive database of SaaS, developers with this kind of a background. We don't do it. That's not the way we do it. That would be a very traditional recruitment approach. What we say is, what the heck is your message? What do people want out of coming to work for you? There's lots of opportunities for people to work in SaaS, but not to work for you. And what is it? What do you want to tell these people? And they go, yeah, I can work in a lot of places, but I like this. I think I'd like to really work there. And that's the attraction mechanism. That's the storytelling that we talk.
Now, from your perspective, employers, and I'm assuming your employers or target customers I'm assuming they are in Canada, correct? Do you work with anything outside of Canada, kind of?
Yes, predominant in North America.
Okay. And do you work with any European countries?
We have occasionally done that. Our Canadian companies have I have provided opportunities for us to work in Europe. Yes.
I do. I'm hosting a business dinner in Toronto Business Networking Dinner on October 23rd at 6:30 p.m. Just near the airport at Scatabush, the restaurant there on Dixon. If you're interested, that would be a great opportunity. I think, and the reason for that is I've got a couple of experts coming from Europe, and the topic of this conversation is going to be business networking locally, obviously, but at the same time, try to imagine a day where these individual companies can look to Europe for expansion. And we'll be talking about grants and government programs to support Canadian government. Those are by the European countries to support Canadian companies going across the pond, kind of thing, and start pivoting, if you will, US to Europe kind of a transaction. So, yeah, I mean, for you and the audience, if you wish to participate in this dinner, the seating is limited, and you can go on my LinkedIn profile and you can participate or register for the event. So
Yeah,
thanks
I would
for
like to
everybody
do
on this
that.
one, and you're invited, by the way.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely. Let's dig into a little bit about Pivot and Edge for companies. You mentioned like you help startups, right? So on the startup side, and not necessarily the Fortune 100. These are young companies, young entrepreneurs, an engineer perhaps who come up with an idea that wants to put it together. You said many companies struggle after the 10 to 15 hires, and they start reaching a cap, if you will, or lack of trying to go beyond that. Generally driven by they never done this before. It's their first time. They're young entrepreneurs. How does Pivot and Edge support them with that? Do you have a specific program for startups, or you treat everybody the same?
No, well, we treat everybody the same, but the majority of our customer base are startups. So I guess it's kind of 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. Having said that, though, one of our largest customers is a $10 billion company based in Japan, but needed a better footprint in North America. So our marketing first approach to hiring resonated really well with them. So we have worked with large companies that need to create a foothold in Canada or the US or both, because their brand challenges would be the same as a brand of a small, medium-sized company. So it kind of does scale.
Yeah.
But no, it's not sort of unique to each company, the strategy. The messaging might be unique because the value proposition is different, and the brand might be different, but the way we get at that and the way we communicate that after we've got the brand story, that process is relatively the same approach.
And in the world of startup, I guess the focus would be on speed, right? I'm an entrepreneur. I want things done quickly, etc. So how do you balance the idea of speed versus quality?
Well, so speed is a focus of our operational part of our business. So we've been focusing a lot on marketing, and I'm glad we have, because I want Pivot and Edge to be thought of as a marketing leader, but in a recruitment environment. But the speed by which we work is really almost 8-year tested operational best-in-class process to take a candidate journey from the beginning of interest and curiosity to the end where they get hired. And I think that's an important element of our service. And I think many of our candidates are surprised at, first of all, the technology stack that we use to ensure that journey is efficient and as quick as possible. And we actually run a certification training session for all our customers on our process, because I don't think, generally speaking, our customers do a very good job until they meet us, a very good job of hiring. I think it can be too many cooks in the kitchen. It can be not clear in terms of what their requests are. Candidates aren't responded to quickly, aren't followed up with. So we built that best-in-class operational process to deliver quality candidates quickly.
Absolutely. And now let's talk a little bit about, if you don't mind, EA, about the future of hiring. And we mentioned it earlier in the recording here, a little bit briefly about AI. So a few things. How, in your opinion, AI is impacting the way you operate at Pivot and Edge? And or where do you see the hiring practices evolving over the next 5 years? Because, I tell you, I'm always visible on LinkedIn, and I read a lot of comments. I hear a lot of people talking about, although I don't engage with most of it sometimes, but I read it. And I hear a lot of conversation, a lot of noise around candidates are now afraid or not afraid or reluctant to apply for a job anymore because of their, and there's evidence for that, where companies are using the candidate information to train their AI engines, be it an application or a conversation like we're having right now, video or audio, all being dissected and being fed to an AI engine. The candidates are reluctant to become a piece of data, which to some extent we are, but not to necessarily encourage it. Where is this going, in your opinion?
So I think you'd be surprised to know the investment that Pivot and Edge has made in its technology stack in total. I mean, if you looked at it, it would look like a marketing company, not like a recruiting company. And our investment in that stack is critically important to our success. And we continually look at better tools, other tools. Tools come available literally, seems like every month there's something out there that we evaluate. And sometimes we incorporate it into our solution, and sometimes we don't because we just don't think it's got the value that we need. I think AI is part of that stack, to be honest. First of all, I'd like to say that I don't think any of our customers would want us to replace their brand and the communication with a potential candidate with an AI bot. I think if I went back to my customers and said, thanks for signing on the dotted line, and by the way, now no person's going to talk to a candidate for you on your behalf, I think that would not go very well. I think they still want that personal approach to that candidate. But do I think AI can play a critical role in our operational piece? I do. Sometimes our hiring managers, as an example, we're looking at AI in this particular case. Sometimes our hiring managers are very strapped with time, and it's critical that when they do an interview, they take notes for that interview and they put that in a database so that we all have access to their thinking in terms of a candidate. To do that well personally, you've got to take notes during the interview. Then you've got to look at those notes. You got to edit those notes. Then you got to put those notes into a database. And we ask that our customers do that so that we learn by each interview what's really important, what's not really important with a candidate. Well, we're evaluating AI to do that today. There are tools out there that will record conversations like this one and summarize those conversations. And as an example, if that could be used for our hiring manager interviews, so that a hiring manager could conduct an interview, look quickly at a summary that take 10 or 15 minutes to read and agree or disagree with the notes that were put down and were added to the database, and say, yes, but I want to add this, or yes, but I want to add that. That would add huge value to our customer, and maybe that AI tool will get used downstream. So we'll always continue to look at how AI can contribute to things, to speed up the process, to ensure that the candidate journey is because we tell these stories and we represent this brand. We are the customer, and that customer relies on us and trusts us to portray that brand as they see it and want it done. And I'm just not comfortable, and I think the rest of the Pivot and Edge team would just not be comfortable putting a bot in front of that process. So yes to AI, but I think there'll be places it'll get used and places that it won't.
So I hear from you that AI would be used in a way that human stays in control. Am I reading you?
Absolutely. Yes, that's exactly what I'm saying. And I just don't think, particularly when you're marketing first and you're trying to attract people to your organization that fit your values, I just don't know how a bot can select that type of candidate.
Absolutely. And you know what? Maybe the bot should not be in charge of selecting candidates, presenting the information, condensing it, summarizing it, etc. Fine. But there are more to human than a computer can really add up and calculate and algorithmically condense into a few paragraphs.
At least for now.
Well, of course, technology is evolving, and I keep saying this. I mean, whatever we talk about technology in whatever context we want to bring it in, positive or negative, It's just a matter of time before it changes. And so yes, I agree with you. Currently, where we are in, September 2025, technology is not there yet to do 100% evaluation on candidate as a human would. It supports the decision. It's a decision supporting mechanism, not necessarily the decision taker in this particular case.
Totally agree.
Come to the end of our conversation. One last question for you, and we'll wrap it up. What's next for Pivot and Edge? Where do you see Pivot and Edge going next? I know, and I hope this conversation today supports your strategy forward, and I hope this conversation that we're conducting today allows more broader audience to listen to your story, encouraged by your story, encouraged by what Pivot and Edge is doing, and reach out to you on this one. And by the way, maybe you can tell us where can listeners and audience connect with you? Perhaps a website or an email address, which will pop them on the screen in the post-edit of this video.
So the takeaway is that be open to a new way of doing something. Just because no one else has done it that you know of doesn't mean it's not going to be effective for you. So step out of the box, listen to a new way, and listen to the story I'm telling. If I could, give anybody a takeaway from the meeting, is that in an early stage startup environment, never stop selling your story. And there's lots of opportunities to do that in social settings, with investors, with family and friends, with business associates, with customers. Never stop telling the story. When you're recruiting that team, be relentless in your pursuit of finding talent that relates to your story, and don't give that up. You'll see the best engineer, the best marketing person, but if you just don't think that person, to use your story earlier, Robin, would jump off the cliff and figure it out on the way down with you, they aren't the right hire in an early stage company, and you need to spend enough time with them to understand if they are. So you need curious people, out of the box thinkers. They have to have all the tools in the tool belt. But in addition to that, they need to have those other attributes. And I think you just need to be, that is an ongoing pursuit that you should never give up.
Absolutely. Yeah, I want to thank you so much for being part of this conversation today. I really enjoyed our call together. It felt relaxed, in a very friendly type of conversation. This is what we go for here on the Localization Fireside Chat. Just a quick story. I started the conversation on the Localization Fireside Chat post-COVID. And I thought about it. I was thinking, I used to meet people face to face all the time. I can't meet people face to face all the time. I enjoy conversation. So why not recording it? So that's how this whole idea started. And this conversation with UEA today, it's an example again why I started the conversation to begin with, why I started this channel to begin with. Just for the fun of it, I love talking to other entrepreneurs, other thought leaders in any industry, and try to bring their stories to the forefront of a lot of noise out there, a lot of stories being told out there. Hopefully this podcast help you positively, help Pivot and Edge positively as well. And if you are in the area next time, I'd love to get together with you over coffee or lunch. And thanks for joining me. Any last words?
No, I appreciate the opportunity to tell my story, and I do think it's an exciting one. And I hope
Absolutely.
people will, I hope people take the next step, be curious, and see if a solution like ours would help them.
Absolutely. To the audience, thank you so much for listening in. Thanks for listening to another podcast. I really appreciate you tuning in to the channel. And again, if you can, like and share and comment and pass this content along to somebody that you think it might be a help for them. It would be great help to EA and myself. And I really appreciate your time with us today. So thanks. And I will talk to you in the next episode next week. Thank you so much.